Hello, buddy. Welcome back to the Tin Man Score channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor, and today I'll be reacting to my third and final scary story channel, and it's Night Time Spooks. And the video that I'll be watching is 4 true fall horror stories. So without further ado, I'm going to turn these lights off, move the camera up here for you guys, and let's get this reaction on the road and in the bag. Okay, here we go.
This story happened about 5 years ago. I was in high school at the time, probably a freshman or sophomore.
Right.
One night in October, me and my friends all went to the high school football game. We'll call them Josh, Sam, and Jake for the story. I remember we all walked to the game together because we only lived a few miles from the school, and we all lived in the same general neighborhood. After the game was over, we all started walking back home together. It was a kind of cold night, and it was very dark outside.
First of all, that's a bonus that if you live right next to the school, you could just walk from home to school during the week and then also go into football games. But it's always good to have friends to walk with you because you definitely don't want to get mugged by anybody while walking by yourself. But anyway, let's continue with the story and see what happens next.
We left the high school campus and walked down the road that led to a quieter part of town. Then we walked past a popular local farm where they sold pumpkins every fall and also had a giant corn maze. Sam jokingly said we should do the corn maze now because it was dark and kind of creepy. I was willing to do it, but Josh and Jake didn't want to, so they stood by the end of the maze, and me and Sam decided to race to see who could get through it first. This maze was no joke. It was a very popular attraction in our hometown, and each fall tons of people would come to it. We got to the beginning of the maze and both started going through it. We quickly went separate directions. There was a path going left and another one going right. Sam went left and I went right. The corn was very thick and stood about 10 feet tall. I walked through the maze and took a couple of turns. The farther I got in, things started to get quieter and quieter. My friends and I are very competitive, so I was determined to win, but I couldn't help but feel a little creeped out being in the middle of a corn maze late at night.
You and me both. I wouldn't even gone in the corn maze because you never know if you'll get lost and start panicking or someone twisted in the mind is hiding, waiting for people to run in and then grab them to delete them or kidnap them. You never know what would happen nowadays in these corn mazes.
I continued for about 5 more minutes in the maze. I had no idea where I was, if I was getting closer or farther from the finish. But then I started to hear footsteps behind me. At first I thought it was Sam, or else one of my other friends decided to enter the maze, so I sped up my walking to try to beat them. I continued to hear the steps, and eventually I just wanted to see who it was, so I turned around and looked behind me. When I did, I heard the corn rustle, but I didn't see anybody. I stood there for a few seconds waiting to hear or see them, but nobody appeared, and it remained silent. I even walked backwards in the maze a little bit, but still saw nothing. I shook my head and decided to continue. I started walking again, and once again started to hear footsteps, but this time it wasn't coming from behind me on the trail, it was coming from in the corn. I could kind of see some of the corn stalks moving around from somebody walking in them. It really didn't seem like something my friends would do, and it made me a little concerned. But who else would be in there at this time?
Exactly. Who else will be there? That's a sign for you to run and get out of that corn maze.
I called out, "Sam?" But there was no response. Then I said, "You're not supposed to be in there, you have to stay on the path." And I chuckled a little, hoping to see one of my friends come out of the corn. But still nothing, and things got quiet once again. I was starting to get a bad feeling and was really creeped out. I decided the best thing to do was to just get out of the maze as quick as possible. I started walking sort of fast to try to find my way to the end. Not long after starting to walk, the noises in the corn started up again. I decided to just ignore them and keep walking. But then I started hearing the footsteps change from the corn to back on the path again. As soon as they did, I turned around and looked. But this time, I saw somebody slowly coming out from behind the corn and onto the path. It clearly was not one of my friends and looked like a grown man. It was dark out, and he was probably about 20 feet away. All I saw was his face, which was looking directly at me. As soon as I saw him, I took off running down the path as quick as I could. I wasn't stopping to think about which paths I would take. I just ran. I started yelling and calling out for my friends as I did. I started to barely hear their voices off in the distance. I knew I was getting closer to the end, and I kept running in that direction. When the path turned, I just ran into the corn and continued as fast as I could. Finally, I made it to the end and burst out. I saw my friends standing by the exit of the maze, which was about 20 feet to the left. Sam had already finished, and they all looked surprised to see me come out of the corn. I just ran to them and said that we had to go because there was a man in there that was following me. I started running all the way back home. My friends ran up to me and told me to relax and tell them what was going on, but I didn't feel comfortable doing so until we were far away from the maze.
He don't have to tell you what's going on. He just told you when he ran out. Said there's a guy following him. I'm glad they already got out of there before this man grabbed him, but you better listen to what he's saying or you guys are going to get grabbed when you stop the talk.
I finally told them the story, and they were pretty shocked. I'm not really sure who the man was or why he was in the maze, but I sometimes wonder what would have happened if he had caught up to me, and I'm always happy that I got out all right.
Yeah, you should be lucky. I guarantee you he probably would have grabbed onto you and robbed you or beat you until you were unconscious and kidnapped you for human trafficking. I don't know. But you did the right thing and just run until you found your friends and got out of that area. But this is why you should not go into corn mazes or cornfields at night because you never know if there's any creepos lurking around there. But I'm just glad he got out of there safe and sound, so let's continue on to story number 2.
Last fall, my girlfriend and I went to a pumpkin patch. It was a yearly tradition for us to carve pumpkins, so we were going to get the best ones that we could find.
Oh, I remember them days when I was younger. I think it was like back during my preschool, kindergarten days. We go on field trips to go to the pumpkin patch and pick out pumpkins, and my mom would sometimes come as a chaperone, and she'd take the pumpkin home and we carve it later. But then as the years went by, we either went to somebody's farm that was selling pumpkins or go to Lowe's, Food Line, or Walmart because they would have them. And I'd pick out the perfect one there and go home and help carve it. But here lately, I haven't been in the mood to carve any pumpkins. Mom will just buy big or small pumpkins and then just set them around the house outside as decor.
This pumpkin patch that we went to was owned by a nice old couple that ran it every single year. We had gone the previous year, so we came back again for a second time. We went on a Thursday evening, and it was later in the day when we arrived, which was nice because there weren't a lot of other people there. There were lots of pumpkins in a field that was right next to a large woods. The older couple that owned the place greeted us as we entered, and then we started looking for a good pumpkin.
That's another good bonus. If you already know the people because you bought pumpkins from them before, then they might give you a good price. But also, you get to pick out the best pumpkin since there ain't nobody hardly there, which is always a bonus. You feel like you grabbed the best one before somebody takes it.
Of course, towards the front, there were not a lot of good pumpkins. Most had been picked over. But the farther you got into the field, you could see some really nice ones. I'm not all that picky about which pumpkin to get, but my girlfriend always has to have the perfect ones. So we wandered farther and farther out until we were around the corner of the field, almost in the woods, to a more secluded area. It was sort of hidden, but when we got there, we saw there were lots of nice pumpkins, and we started looking through them all. I would say we were there for about 10 minutes until it started to get really dark out, so we decided to wrap things up and get our pumpkins. But just as we were deciding on the last one we would get, we heard something coming from just inside the woods. We both looked over to see what was there. We saw what appeared to be the old couple standing halfway behind a tree, looking at us. But they both had really creepy smiles on their faces, and their eyes were open super wide. I really couldn't believe what I was seeing for a few seconds. I had no idea what they were doing. They just stood there staring. Finally, I said hello to them, but they didn't answer. They just slowly disappeared behind the tree and then walked deeper into the woods.
Okay, that's a little creepy. They wouldn't know that this older couple would have been doing things like this. I'll be wondering why are they spying on them and smiling like that? Like, were they planning on attacking him just so they could keep the pumpkins? I don't know. But I would either drop the pumpkins and leave or take the pumpkins and see if they're back at the house already. Because if they ain't there, I'll be considering these pumpkins free.
My girlfriend was just as confused as me and really creeped out. We had no interest to go into the woods and see where they went. Instead, we walked back to the front of the field to the entrance. The couple was gone now, and we were the only people there. We decided to leave the pumpkins and just get out of there. We went elsewhere to get our pumpkins that year and haven't returned there since.
Which, that's more of a smart move. Because if that couple's acting crazy like that, I wouldn't return, especially during the regular daylight hours. And plus, if you try to spread news about what you saw, the people in town, they probably won't believe it, and the older couple will probably deny it. I'm just glad that you guys did not get jumped by this older couple. Then you really been having nightmares for life.
For some background to this story, I'm a 27-year-old female. I live nearby a rather large city, and for my job, I often walk to work. It takes me about 20 to 30 minutes. There is a park with the woods that I often walk through because it's on the way and it's much more scenic. One day last fall, probably late October or early November, I was on my way to work at about 7 a.m.
Right.
It was still pretty dark out at this time, but the sun was beginning to come up. I got onto the path in the woods and walked for about 5 minutes on it, but then I started to hear footsteps coming from directly behind me. Typically, I would never see anybody in the woods, and not until I got closer to work. Still, it wasn't a big deal to see somebody, but being a woman alone in a large city in the middle of a woods, you always have to be alert.
Oh, definitely, because you never know if the person that is following you might cause you harm by robbing you or kidnapping you, or worse, do something nasty with you in the sexual way. So if you hear them starting sprinting towards you, you better run.
I glanced over my shoulder to see who it was, but I saw no one. It was really strange because I was sure I had just heard footsteps.
Yeah, that would be strange.
It made me a little more concerned, thinking that somebody was possibly hiding from me now. I just kept walking though because I knew I would be out of the woods within 10 minutes. A short time later, I heard the footsteps again. I ignored them and kept walking. However, they seemed to be getting closer, so once again I looked, but I saw nothing. I knew now that something was definitely up. I reached into my purse and felt around until I found my pepper spray. Then I kept walking. The footsteps started up for a third time and got closer and closer to me. Finally, I felt somebody grab my shoulder. I turned around quickly, ready to spray, but again nobody was there. It was the strangest thing ever. I stood there looking around in disbelief for a good 30 seconds. I knew what I felt and I knew what I heard. I didn't know what to do, so I just went on with my business and didn't hear the footsteps again. Needless to say, I don't walk in those woods anymore.
Which I wouldn't blame you, because if you don't see the person that's running behind you, then they were either hiding in the woods or it's something to do in the paranormal field. Either way, that's creepy. I wouldn't walk in no woods like that unless I was with somebody or it was in the daytime. But I'm just glad that this person was able to get to work safe and sound and they chose not to walk through there anymore. That was definitely a close call.
When I was a child, I remember I always got excited when the fall came because Halloween was one of my favorite holidays. Usually, a couple of weeks before, my little sister and I would carve pumpkins and then put them out on the front step.
Like I said earlier, I used to love carving pumpkins and make scary looking jack-o'-lantern faces on them. But also Halloween is one of my favorite holidays as well. In the fall, weather starts to cool down a little bit, and I love the changing colors of the leaves. Always seems like a wonderful time of year, as well as winter and Christmas season, of course.
We would always try to carve cool faces or designs into the pumpkins. One year when I was probably 8 or 9 years old, my mother went to the store and got some really nice big pumpkins. When she got back from the store at night, we decided to carve them. I made a creepy looking pumpkin face on mine, and my sister did one smiling. When we were done carving them, my sister and I went outside to put them on the front step. As soon as we stepped out the front door, though, we saw a man in our driveway. It was really dark outside, but we could both clearly see him. I couldn't make out much details about him, but I just remembered that he looked kind of short and about middle-aged. As soon as he saw us, he ran away. But he didn't run back down the driveway to the street. Instead, he ran to the side of our house near our garage. My sister and I both ran back inside to our mother and told her what we had seen. She called my dad into the room, and he went outside to investigate. When he came back inside about 10 minutes later, he said that he didn't see or hear anybody out there. So after that, our parents both went inside with us, and we put our pumpkins on the front step. Then we went back inside once again. The next morning when I woke up, I went downstairs and saw that my mom was on the phone with the police. I asked what had happened, and my dad showed me that the back door to the house had been damaged and the window was smashed. Our pumpkins on the front step were also smashed. However, nothing was missing inside the house or damaged. The police came, and I ended up having to talk to them and tell them what I had saw. The man was never caught, and I don't know who he was.
That is another thing that I don't like about Halloween. People do cruel pranks or be mean and destroy kids' pumpkins or damage people's properties for no reason at all. Seems like Halloween brings the creeps out at night. I'm just sorry that them kids had to go through that. Hopefully that man doesn't get caught. If not, I'll be furious because he might come back around next Halloween and do the same thing. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on post notifications for more Nighttime Spooks content like this. This has been another successful installment of the Tin Man's Core channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor, and I said that's a wrap, and have a nice day, y'all.